Hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much, all of you, to be here. We first want to start by apologizing for what happened a few weeks ago when you registered for that same webinar and we had a technical issue. That's what it is. The most important, apologies again for that. The most important thing is that you are here and we have our two experts to talk about the topic of the day, which is the French long-term visa process. We know you wouldn't have registered if you didn't have a lot of questions about that topic. Sometimes frustrating process, and we are here to try to help you. Fabien Pelisser, who is on the left hand side, might be on your left hand side on your screen, is Fab French Insurance founder. And he's going to lead this webinar. And we are fortunate enough to have Michel Dejaegher here, who is an expert in the field. He's a former French diplomat, former consul general in a lot of places, and founder of HD Visa, obviously, Visa Consultant. Again, the way it works, as usual, is that you can ask your question starting right now if you want. You have a little button at the bottom saying Q&A. You can write your questions there. We will take them as much as possible. If we have time, we have an hour together, so we should be able to take your questions. Don't hesitate. Start right now if you want. Fabien is going to do a presentation first to explain to us, all of this works, and then we'll keep most of the questions. We'll take most of the questions towards the end of this webinar. Thank you again to everyone for being here. Again, start asking your question right now if you want in the Q&A section. And Fabien, I'll give you the floor for the presentation. With your mic on.
Yeah, with the mic on. Take on our side this time. Thank you very much. Well, I'll try to be as not boring as possible when talking about administration stuff. And we'll try to explain the process, as I like to say, as simple as Frenchly possible, which is twice as relevant given the name of the magazine, which is Frenchly as well. Today we'll be speaking about French visa applications. Obviously, we focused mainly on the long-term visa. VLS, which literally stands for Visa Long Term in France. It's a very, very quick overview because, again, we'll be focusing on the long-term visa, but there are different types of visas, more than three, but I've grouped them in three different categories. When you are going to France, actually usually in the Schengen area, you need what we call a Schengen visa or short-term visa. So this is usually when less than 3 months, so 90 days. So it's the classic tourist visa for short duration tourism. Then there is the VLST, which is the I would say the intermediary visa. It's kind of a long-term visa, but it's not for 1 year or multiple years residencies, for example, or people that want to move abroad for long-term. So it's usually used on specific scenarios. So I won't be focusing on this one either. The main focus would be the VLSTS, the most popular visa, which TS is a French specific visa, this one, although it's valid all across the Schengen area. Thanks for Michel, because he is the one who actually created the TS visa, because TS stands for titre de séjour. So it's a visa that's also valid and equivalent of a titre de séjour in France. So this is a French specific, although it's valid all across the EU, more specifically the Schengen area. And that's the focus here. So who needs a long-term visa? So let's kick open some doors, because obviously most of you, I suppose, know, if you're here, you probably already know about the requirements or actually why you need one. But just in case, let's review most of the situations. So first, obviously, visas are required when you're not an EU citizen. When we say EU citizen, it's actually like a bit broader than this, because EEA nationals, some countries like Iceland, Norway, which are part of the EU as well, but not the economic area. So it's a different, they are not part of the euro area. Sorry. Or if you
I don't want to interrupt. Sorry. Do you want to share your presentation?
Oh, sorry, the presentation is not there. Oh, yeah.
No, it's not there. That's, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you see, techniques again. Yeah. Yeah, here it is. Sorry.
Here we
guys.
go. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so the long-term visa, as I was saying, so the requirements, either you're non-European, so obviously if you're American, South African, all of the countries are not part of the EU, or not yet, depending. But I mean, technically speaking, some countries are part of the EU, but are not in the Eurozone, like Norway, they don't use the euro, but so still valid. So they don't need a visa. If you already are a visa holder, or obviously if you're a resident from an EU country, these are the situations where you would not need a visa. If you're, I would say, a non-European citizen, then you would need the visa. Most likely, again, it depends. That's so different situations, but these are the general situations. And obviously the long-term visa is required when you stay in France for more than 90 days or intend to stay in France for more than 90 days in a year. So, well, this seems obvious, but you need to have a legal reason. The visa is not an automatic thing. It's not because you want to spend 6 months in France and you fit what you think is the criteria to get the visa, but you need a legal reason to be in France. So here, again, I've regrouped some of them, but here are the list, here are the reasons that are accepted. Obviously, if you're a relative to a French citizen and European citizen, but again, I'm focusing on France here. So family visa is an option. If you have a specific skill or hired by a company, or sometimes if you're also a relative to someone that has a specific skill, then you have this passport talent. Obviously, if you come because you're intent to set shop in France or for business reasons, there is the business and there is the employed or employment visa. We also have the equivalent of what you would call the working holiday visa in some countries. So study visa, so visa for studies. But again, the most common one, the one that's sometimes the jack of all trades, it's kind of the tourist visa, the long-term tourist visa, also called the visitor visa. So this is like the wild card. This is the one that's usually used because this is the one with the, I would say, where the requirements are the lightest, not the simplest, but not necessarily the simplest, but most of the time. So a quick note about that, because although it might seem irrelevant, for example, from a US perspective, an American's perspective, or any other countries, and although it's not directly connected, but Brexit changed a lot of things because most consulates are, well, actually, it's not dealt directly by the consulates, but well, by definition, it's supposed to be that they're subcontracting this to private companies. But most consulates are more picky now. I remember a time, no, not that far away, three years ago, we could provide applications, we could send applications with documentation. Well, in my case, insurance, for example, which was not 100% compliant, and it would have been accepted anyway. It's no longer the case since Brexit. Basically, plus or minus a couple of months, they look at the documentation much more closely, which means they're more picky, even with well, everyone else. And it's not just for the Brits; it's for everyone. So they're more picky. Many applications get denied because of the insurance bit, because the requirements here are quite, I would say, intense, because a travel insurance usually doesn't fit it. And for the British expats, the EIC is no longer accepted by definition. This was the European international cover, which has been replaced by the GIC, but the EIC is no longer accepted. So these are the main differences since Brexit. For non-Brits, the most important one is that they are now more picky, and so that's why it's important to make sure the application is done properly to avoid rejection. Let's get back to the main topic about how to get the long-term visa. So first, the brand shiny new website, France Visa. I mean, for once, it's not that bad for considering France usually is lagging a bit behind in terms of tech. This one's really very nice. It contains many information. It's available in French and in English. So feel free to have a look. France Visa, visas.fr. So very useful. Everything can be done there. It's basically the one-stop shop if you want to do that on your own. Although some might find it very difficult, so that's why using the services of a handholding company or immigration lawyers can be useful as well. This is the part I like, because usually from a foreign perspective, this is what French bureaucracy looks like. That specific slide, because, well, let's face it, French, I suppose we do love the paperwork, and it seems confusing most of the time. But if we dig deeper, there is a logic to everything we're doing, and there is a logic, and if you follow the process, odds are very high that you will get through. So it's just a matter of being thorough in your application. So first, where to apply, I've considered the two, I would say, main countries of immigration to France. Obviously, there are tons of others, just to have an idea to say that that the application centers are a bit scarce. For example, in the US, here are the spots. Well, there is also one in Canada, but on the map, you can see the places of the VFS, because so the consulates are subcontracting to VFS at the moment in the States, for example. In the UK, the subcontractor is called TLS Contact. And there are even fewer places, only 3. Well, one in Ireland, but that's not in the UK. So yeah, one thing people usually don't know is that when you go to the meeting, they'll keep your passport, the original of your passport. So until they either valid or reject your visa, well, usually they keep it, it should be valid, but you would not be able to travel, for example, because they'll keep the original. So unless you have copies or, but so that's something important to keep in mind. So also, you need to have everything pre-filled, pre-done, everything should be basically in pristine condition, ready to go for when you go to the meeting. If anything is missing, you go there because you have questions, it will be rejected. So to avoid frustration, make sure you print off your application, you have everything on hand for the day when you actually book the appointment with either VFS or TLS, because you'll have to have a physical appointment. Well, timing is key as well. If you intend to go to France, I don't know, 8 months from now, I say, okay, cool, there is tons of stuff to be done. I'll start the application right now. So you can prepare, indeed, but there is like an application window. You can do that too early, and you can do that too late either. So basically, you can't apply more than 3 months ahead before the scheduled arrival date. And the interview you'll book should not be should not be too close to the arrival date. It should be more than 1 month ahead of the anticipated departure date or arrival date. So, well, this last one is more like a theoretical thing, because sometimes the application center is so full that they do accept applications a couple of weeks prior to the arrival, or sometimes even a couple of days prior to the arrival. I've seen that happening. I mean, so this one is more like a theoretical one. you should have this one in mind. Although the 3 month is a hard cap though, because if you apply 4 months ahead, this is certain they won't process it. The second one is a bit more flexible. I've done, well, this is also available on France Visa, but I've done a quick checklist that you can screenshot, or if you get the presentation afterwards, or if you go to fabfrenchinsurance.com, for example, we have an article about that, so you can get the list. But we've made a quick checklist for the VLS TS Visa, quick application, make sure you tick all the boxes, and odds are very, very high. You should be good to go. Although the list looks fine, some of these items are more difficult to procure than it seems. For example, the reason for the stay, like, how do they prove that? Or proof of accommodation, for example, this may seem simple, in real life, not so much. So for example, the proof of income or proof of savings. The theoretical requirement, so real life is a bit different, but the theoretical requirement is a bit complex, because they require, depending on how long you'll stay, that you are able to prove that you have the equivalent of a certain revenue per day, or a certain lump sum, aside, or things like that. The theoretical, well, this is on paper, this is the requirement. In real life, as long as you have an income, you can prove you're stable, you're usually good. But that's also why this is not my part. That's why handholding companies can become very handy then, because this is a case-by-case basis. They need to have a look at your file and see what's relevant and what is not. So there are tons of stuff that makes visa insurance, the visa insurance bit as a very complex one, because the requirements are not crystal clear. It's difficult to understand all of the requirements, and it's very frustrating to get the visa denied because of that document. So, well, you have here basically all that sums up the requirements for the visa insurance. It should cover, obviously, it should cover the duration of your visa. If it doesn't, so for example, if you intend to arrive on the 1st of January, the policy should start on the 1st of January. And if you intend to stay for a year, the policy should then lapse, over the course of 1 year, and it should be stated on the certificate of insurance. If the insurance started at a different date, well, if it starts at a later date, this is a rejection, automatic. If it started earlier, this could still be accepted, but then the certificate of insurance should display the fact that the policy has automatic renewal that's active and available on the policy you've chosen. So this is one thing. It's not a travel insurance. It should cover both the emergencies, so hospitalization, of course, but also medical expenses. If you get COVID, for example, if you have a cold, or, things like that, like the day-to-day stuff. Although I hope you don't go to the GP on a day-to-day basis. Then no medical exclusions should be applied. Basically, this should be the equivalent of what the French social security system would procure should you be in France. It should also include repatriation, of the body in the worst case scenario event, or of yourself if you are critically ill and it's actually cheaper to get you back to your home country and stable, obviously, to get medications. And public liability all across the EU is also, the Schengen area is also a requirement in case you causes some damages to, others. There is a fun thing. You should have 30,000 euros worth of cover. So the medical part should cover at least up to 30,000 euros worth of medical expenses. Although some application centers seems to have took the liberty to change this. And for example, in London, they've applied 100,000 as a requirement without real legal reason. It's just kind of I suppose London is a posher area, and they've decided that it's probably a good thing to increase the hard cap but there is no particular reason. But again, they are the one with the stamp. It can be green or it can be red. So, it doesn't cost very much to, to fit their requirement, but it's important to know them, and why using a professional as well is often important. This is pretty much it about insurance. Insurance it's not the most important, the most thrilling topic, but it's important because it gets many applications rejected. So don't overlook this part. So the process to get the visa, well, it varies massively depending on the consulate and obviously how busy they are, the time of the year, many things. So I could say you can count on a couple of weeks usually. Once you've submitted the application, once you went, you had your interview at the VLS center or the VFS center, you can usually count on a couple of weeks to get the Holy Grail, the visa. But again, it could be faster, it could take longer. It really depends. For example, when we had an influx of migrants from Ukraine, the consulates were much more busier than they were used to, so it just was processed slower. Or when there is political turmoil, when we had problems with the crisis with the submarines contract, from the Australian state being cancelled, consulates were a bit more reluctant to process some applications, I would say faster, things like that. So, but a couple of weeks is usually what you can count on as a rule of thumb, although to be taken with a pinch of salt, if not buckets of salt sometimes. You'll need to go in person. Remember that. That's why I showed you the map. You'll need to go there in person. So if you're center US, well, I hope you have a good car or a good plane for the luckiest. And also there is something that's French specific, because this is not a typical visa. We are the only one with a VLSTS, which is titre de séjour. So it needs to be activated once you're in France. So there is something, Michel's a big fan of the OFII, the Immigration Bureau, I could say, in France. And they are the one where you should activate the visa against within the first 3 months once you're in France. This is very important. Otherwise, the visa is no longer valid. Well, this one's important. How much does it cost? So actually, most of the costs are not very expensive. The costs are usually from the third parties or third-party providers, like me, for example, insurance. So well, there is the appointment. Same prices vary depending on the center. I've taken the example of New York. Just the rate they charge right now, but depending on the center, it might vary. They have options, if fast lane, for example, and each center might have a different set of options. Some might charge higher fee if you'd like to be able to cross the line, for example, for a faster processing, things like that. So again, then you can have a look online and you'll see all the pricing. But New York charges for the appointment. There is what they call the courier fee, because they need to send you the passport back, and that's usually not in person. So there is a fee for that, as it's a sensitive document. Also, if you don't have everything on hand, for example, your passport, if you don't photocopy each page of your passport, then the file is not complete. Then they'll need to get a photocopy of each page. They can do that on site, but they'll charge you for it. I'm saying that because this is typically something people forget. There is the application fee itself, usually, so that's the equivalent. It's 99 euros, but obviously equivalent of the US dollar rate at the time your charge of that. And depending on the process, you might have extra costs. Sometimes, if you need copies of marital documentation or certificate of birth, for example, that require you that you provide them with documentation that could be translated into French. You need to call a notary to get the official documentation. So this can incur extra costs. If they need translated documentation because, I don't know, it's in Arabic, for example, then again, extra costs. So obviously I didn't consider these costs. I considered like a typical application, but you can have side costs as well regarding that. Hand-holding companies obviously the pricing varies massively. You know, it can go above easily, you know, $3,000 and even more than that, depending on the complexity it can be. But it's very, very rare that it goes under $1,500. So that's why I've given the example of this. And private insurance, well, same. Obviously, it depends if you're on your own, if you're a couple, if you're a family, if you're young, if you're retired, the pricing will vary massively as well. But you can count on a good 1,500s. Again, could be much more depending on the situation. But it's to throw out some numbers so you have an idea of the overall cost of the visa process and that part of the expatriation or relocation. So basically, you're looking of a lump sum of a good 3,000-ish. So this is something to be considered, because if you think it's only going to cost a couple $100, usually it costs quite a bit more because of the things I've just mentioned. So I've glimpsed into that. Let's we're almost close to the end of the presentation. So yeah, this is again France specific, because once you're in France, if you intend to stay in France so for 1 year, then the VLSTS will do the job because it acts as a carte de séjour. But then if you intend to stay in France for more than 1 year, then there is that theoretical process you should follow. So, you know, within 90 days, well, there is the before, you know, with 90 days before your intending expatriation, you make the appointment, and then within the 30 days, you go to the appointment at the center, everything goes smoothly, you are accepted, that's fantastic, and then you move to France. So that's day 0. And then within the 90 days of arrival in France, then you should activate the visa. I can't say that enough. Activate the visa. If you forget, it's no longer valid. It would be a big pain if you forget to do that. It's done online. It's very easy. There is a small fee, but it needs to be done. Activate the visa within 90 days, and then you have a visa for like 1 year. And after that 1 year, if you'd like, you can, well, go back to your own country, apply for another visa, and do the process all over again. You can pretty much do that as much as you'd like, but it's a bit of a painful process. There is an easier way in France, because you can try to apply for what we call a carte de séjour or a titre de séjour, and this one potentially can do. So at first they'll give you a 1 year or 2 years carte de séjour, and eventually you can go for a titre de séjour that's valid for up to 10 years. So and that's usually after 5 years. Again, depending on the situations, things might vary. But then this is much, much more convenient, because basically you could have like a 10 years visa, which is basically what a carte de séjour could be in your case. So that's very convenient. And that's everything could be dealt with in France. You don't have to go back to the home country. So that's very convenient. And then you're welcome to France. You have the SESAM, the Holy Grail of French expat, which looks like this. It's a copy of a French visa, well, one from Washington. And again, don't forget to activate. After your appointment at the center, you'll be provided with something that looks like this, that reminds you, you know, within the first 3 months, they remind you of the URL to activate the visa. Don't forget this. I hope it wasn't too long and too boring. Now you can the questions, and at the end of the presentation, I'll share the details if you want to get in touch.
That's great. Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions, actually, so we're going to jump into it right now. Let's start with one. You talked about validating the visa, and which is very important. Apparently, Teresa, who is writing to us, said she's had some issues because she cannot validate their long stay online visa online, because the online process failed after buying our tax stamp, and now it is past the expiry date. What do we do now? And she says she lives in the 8th arrondissement in Paris. So how can we help Teresa here?
I'll let Michel intervene. No.
Well, it's supposed to. Is my microphone on? Yes. Well, it's supposed to work. It's the first time I hear someone having problems with the validation, the online validation. I would recommend you send a mail to the office and to let them know about the problem, so that they may ask you to come in person to their offices to try to solve this problem. But it must be very rare. It's the first time I hear about it, and I've done it myself for several people, and it worked perfectly well. So I guess you made some kind of a mistake while entering data online.
Okay, so send an email, Teresa, and maybe you can also contact directly Fabrice or Michel. You'll get the contacts in the
double. I mean, if you can, that's kind of the rule of thumb in France. Try to double that with recorded, what we call lettre recommandée avec accusation, or recorded delivery letter. Because then if you're in any kind of trouble, you can prove that you've tried to do something about the situation.
Yeah, if you send us a mail, let us know exactly your address so we know exactly which office to be contacted.
Excellent, thank you. Tricia, I mean, it's a much broader question, and we've already addressed it, but I'll ask you maybe to sum up. Bonjour, she says, what is the process for obtaining a visa for a retiree moving to France from the US?
Well, it depends how long she wants to stay in France.
She's moving, so presumably
definitely
she's retiring to France.
Retiring. Well, she should start with a visitor's visa. Ask for a visitor's visa and mention that she wants to retire in France, definitely. If she's got the resources, sufficient resources, and an insurance, at least for the first year, then it shouldn't be a problem for France. France accepts a lot of retirees from United States, from UK, from Canada. Now the question is really to request a visa through the proper channel and file a proper request for a visa.
Which is brings us maybe to the question from Evie. She sent that via email before the webinar today, and she was asking, I'm planning to move to Paris in March or April 2023. She's 73 years old, retired. She has Social Security, some investments that will supplement her income with distribution every month. What is the financial requirement to be considered solvent? Not only to be accepted for a one-year visa, but also to be able to renew each year after that.
Well, she will have to. Yeah, she will have to ask first for a one-year visa. But you should mention asking for this one-year visa that she's going to stay after the expiry of this visa, and that she will ask for what we call a titre de séjour, which is a residence permit. I think the best would be for her to write a letter, a covering letter, to mention and indicate exactly to the consulate what are her intentions, so the consulate knows exactly what she wants to do in France. And if she joins all the proper documents which are mentioned on the checklist on the France Visa website, then it shouldn't be a problem for her to get a visa.
And more specifically, is there a number that is considered a minimum to be able to be considered as having enough income? That's also a question we got from someone who doesn't give their name, planning to consider France for retirement. In general, what is the income I would need to show as an individual and or as a couple?
Well, the minimum would be the minimum monthly salary, which is
the minimum
around
wage in France. Yeah,
yeah,
minimum wage.
Yeah.
You give the number.
It's roughly, I think current date, it's roughly 1,300 net. Yeah,
I think it's a little bit more actually, but I think it's 15.
Yeah, a bit more.
Yeah.
A month.
Yeah,
Per
net,
month.
net, no, not row. Yeah, net. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think it's 1,700 or something like that. Yeah.
She should also mention in the letter how if she wants to stay in a house, or if she wants to buy a house or whatever, I think she should give as much information as possible within a maximum of 1.5 pages, because I don't think the consulate would read more than that.
Yeah, because Michel is right, because I mentioned this in the presentation, but a bit quickly. But it does make a difference if you intend to, I don't know, stay at your friends or have your own property or be a renter, or well, obviously it changes, because, for example, if you have your own property, that makes you super solvent all of a sudden because you have a property in France, so you'll have low requirements. Basically, what I want to know is, will you be a burden on the state or not? So if you are above minimum wage, if you have your own home, etc., odds are almost automatic that you will be accepted. Although it's not automatic, but basically, if the habitation is secured and you have above minimum wage income or savings that could allow you to have some kind of equivalent of the minimum wage in France income, well, this is almost already secured, considering that you have a bit that is compliant. Well, then 98% of the requirements are covered.
We have a question about health insurance. So I understand that I will need health insurance for the entire year of the 1-year visa. Does this include repatriation, and is it necessary to maintain repatriation coverage as long as I live in France?
So with the visa, as long as you're under a visa, yes. With the residency permit, so once you have the carte de séjour, no longer. The public liability is no longer a requirement. Repatriation can remain a requirement. Then it depends on your situation in France. Basically, then this is a different set of requirements, because then you'll apply for a carte de séjour. And at the prefecture, this is no longer something that's dealt with by the consulate. At the prefecture in France, they'll tell you about the requirements depending on your situation. The thing that's important about the health insurance is that you no longer need to have private medical insurance once you're into the French system, because eventually, in some scenarios, well, most of the time, because eventually you'll be granting, if you intend to remain in France for a long period, then you'll be eligible for entering the French system eventually. And once you're part of the French system, so basically once you have a French social security number that's valid, you no longer need the private medical insurance. And this is a major thing, because the insurance obviously is very costly. So then you can switch to a very cheap, well, much cheaper top-up health insurance in France, something we call mutuelle. And that's an important part of the journey, because it could help reduce the costs significantly. And that usually the first year you need private insurance, and then from year 2 or above, you can consider you might be eligible for mutuelle if you've done the step. But this is not something automatic. You need to apply the social security number in France.
Excellent. We have a question saying, as American citizens, it's a couple owning a fully paid property in France and who are free to travel overseas throughout the year, should we even consider a VLS or just strategically plan our stays? We will maintain our primary residence in the US.
Well, it depends how long you want to stay in France. if you don't intend to stay in France for more than 90 days per any period of 180 days, that's 3 months per every period of 6 months. In that case, you don't need to apply for a long-term visa. You can just stay in France and enjoy life in France for 3 months, and then go back to, well, outside the Schengen area and come back again in France for another 3 months. And you don't have to worry about getting a long-term visa. But
and that won't get you
stay over. You should not stay over, because I have a friend who stayed over because of the COVID crisis, and she got into trouble.
But if you can have many stays, one after the others, as long as they are less than 90 days, it's not going to get you in trouble next time you get in.
No, 90 days.
As long as it's not over 90 days per period of 6 months, then there is no problem.
Okay.
Because if you go 90 days, then you go back, and 1 month later you come just for 1 week, you've exceeded the period. This is 90 days per 6 months, basically.
6 months. Okay. Shelly is asking, once you get your visa, how many days are you required to actually be in France? So, for example, my husband and I are hoping to move next year, but we also want to still spend some time in the US. What are the limitations?
Well, it depends on the validity of the visa. If it's a visa, you have a period of validity to enter the Schengen area in France. So within the period of validity, you can enter the French territory anytime.
But the question was more, once you are there, do you have to be there a certain number of days, or can you go back and forth once you have entered once?
I don't think I get the question.
You can freely, once you're accepted, you can go in France freely. If you don't want to come into France, you just got a visa for nothing. But yeah, no, there is no.
Okay. So Gerard is asking, case of a spouse, the American spouse of a French citizen with French residence and French health insurance, arriving with a visa for a spouse visa. Mm-hmm. When are they going to get the CPAM, the health coverage, la Sécu, and what's happening? What about the health insurance when you are in France?
I can answer this one. So first, regarding the first name, so he said he's a French citizen. So it depends if his CPAM's number. So CPAM is the French Social Security. Depends if the CPAM's number is active or not, because when you've been away from France for a while, most of the time the number has been deactivated. So
they're talking about an American spouse. So presumably that American spouse
he's already
doesn't have a Social Security number.
Okay. So he has a number, it's active, but it's important because if the number is not active, it's not the same. So let's say he has a number, it's active, and his spouse is coming. So basically he'll be applying as a spouse for her to join the system. In France, this is not like a joint Social Security number. At first, she'll be under a temporary number. Sometimes she may even be given the same number as him for a temporary period. This varies massively. This is usually a very long process, 6 to 9 months on average, from what I've experienced from the customers we have, because usually they are insured privately at first, and then they switch to top-up health insurance once they get the CPAM's number. But so the process usually, in theory, this is less than 3 months, but in real life, more like 6 to 9 months, if not a year. This is a long process. The only thing now that's uncertain is that for the wife, she needs to wait 90 days. She cannot, unless she's already a resident, but basically you need to be officially a resident in France to be able to start the process. If you're not a resident unless you've been around for at least 90 days, otherwise you're a tourist. And then you can start the application process. And once she is into the system, so once she has a number, whatever is temporary, whatever is, it's her husband's that's been allocated to her, but she is on the system, or whatever, she has the final number, that's not really relevant, she then becomes eligible to top up health insurance. In that meantime, she's only eligible to private medical insurance or private offers.
Great. I think we can stop the screen sharing, by the way. I just noticed we still have it on. Shaylee actually responded back and she said about the house, how many months she can spend. And she says, no, we have a house and planning to retire. So we are hoping to spend 9 months in France and then travel for 3 months outside of the EU, probably back to the US. Is that okay?
Well, in that case, she should apply for a long-term visa and mention that she doesn't want to stay more than 9 months in France. She would get a special type of visa, which is valid for 9 months or 10 months.
Okay.
She would still have to validate it, though. Yeah.
Michel is asking, she might have reason to worry. She's asking, is the FBI report still required?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Is a FBI report still required?
Normally,
doesn't ring a bell to me.
If you have a good one, you can, of course, attach it to your application, but it's not required.
Okay. Excellent.
No, but I mean, there is a fun story here, because if you intend to come to France, well, eventually you'll have to deal with car insurance, and perhaps you'd like to keep the American discount on your insurance policy or driver policy. And you will be required at that stage to provide an extract from the state, driver record from the state, and all the state you've been in, basically all through your adult life. So yeah, that would be required. Although we will only look at insurance claims and won't notice or won't be bothered by any tickets or whatever, even felonies you might have had. Yeah.
There's not really a question. Gloria is asking, are we going to get a recording? So yes, it's you have the link to the replay. If you registered for this webinar, then you will get an email with the replay. Otherwise, it's going to be available on the YouTube channel for on Frenchly. Once in France on a VLSTS, can you return to the US or other non-EU country for a visit, or do you have to stay in France for the entire year covered by the visa? You're not in prison, are you?
No, once you have a TLS, then you are allowed to travel to any other Schengen country. There is one condition: you're not supposed to stay more than 3 months in every Schengen country. But apart from this, you are free to travel around the Schengen area.
The question was more non-Schengen, out of Europe, and let's say back to the US, for example.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. You still have a valid long-term visa, so you can return back to France anytime.
So go back to your country, go back to France. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Michel,
we've tried building walls all across the country. Once back in the World War II, it didn't work. So now we stop this. People can come and go.
Michel is asking, so we own a house in France. Does that count as a legal reason for a visa, or does it help in any way? I think we answered that a bit.
No, there is no legal reason for the consulate to give you a visa. So it's up to the discretion of the consulate. So of course, it's better to mention it that you own a house in France, but it's not a reason for the consulate to be obliged to give you a visa.
But it does help, right?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, that there is political turmoil. Sometimes, they don't really say why they do accept or don't some visas. Although being a resident, being a owner of a property does help, for example, for proving that you'll have a stable situation once in France. So, as I said, it's not a legal reason, but it helps. It definitely helps.
What's very important is to say the truth. You don't have to claim something else. Just tell exactly what you intend to do. If you want to have a good time in France, just say it. Don't say something else. Because if you don't say the truth, then obviously the consulate is going to think that there is something fishy, and then they will become suspicious. So, but if you tell the truth blankly, you want to go to France, you want to spend a good time, you want to eat good cheese with good wine and bread and whatever, you want to go to concerts and so on, these are very good reasons you should give, and it's accepted.
Are applications by a married couple considered jointly, or is it each person treated separately?
Well, officially it's separate, but for practical reasons, it's going to be examined together. And I doubt very much the French consulate would give a visa to one without the other.
Okay. Hal wants to know, do Medicare Advantage private plans provide the necessary medical insurance for those French purposes?
No, unfortunately not. No, because for that, and we've seen it on the field, even American plans like Bupa, for example, they're not compliant because they have copay, and this is supposed to be a no excess or no deductible policy. So no, because it's not comprehensive enough, unfortunately.
Carla wants to know, will the embassy take my photo and fingerprints, or do I need to have this in hand?
No, they will collect the fingerprints and also a photo.
So they'll need to have pictures. They don't have a photomaton.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to bring your photos.
You also need to go with 1 or 2 photos. Normally, it is safer to take 2.
Okay. And take your fingers with you, because you're going to take fingerprints.
Well, it's recommended, yes.
I'm staying with Evie saying...
The more you bring, the better.
Yeah, I'm staying with French people, not family, when I arrive until I find an apartment. What is the proof I need to show that I have housing?
Whatever.
But how can I prove that?
Usually a statement from them
they'll
be hosted somewhere.
Yeah, it could be a statement from them. It could be, The important thing is to tell the truth. So you give the correct address, you tell that you are going to stay with those people. And of course, if those people can make a statement, that would be appreciated.
Okay. And I think we have one more question. It's almost time to go. Kim is Canadian and eligible for a talent passport, and will come on the tourist visa for 3 months to look for jobs. If I get a contract, will I need to come back to Canada to get the visa at the consulate there? Or can I apply and obtain the visa in France through the visa website?
Well, first, you don't need a visa to go to France if it's under 3 months. So you can just go.
No, exactly. But once the question was, once she's there and finds a job there.
Well, normally the prefecture may accept to give you a residence permit. once you find a job in France, but it's not automatic. And they may also ask you to go back to Canada to get a long-term visa. And there is no fixed rules about it.
Yeah,
the question was sorry, Fabrice.
No, yeah, these are the kind of situation like this is typically French, although this is kind of a good thing. On paper, she's supposed to go back to her country and apply for a long-term visa. In real life, it depends on the day. If she secures a job after like 85 days, it's almost certain that the prefecture will deny and say, go back to your own country and apply for the visa because we're too close to the date. But if she secures a job pretty quickly, and then go to the prefecture ASAP, and the prefecture is nice to her basically, and then they're willing to help, they can help her secure a residency permit. But as Michel said, unfortunately, this is not automatic. This is based on their goodwill. Yeah.
The question was specifically about the talent passport.
Whatever the passport. Yeah, that's the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever the type of visa, the passport talent is not a passport, actually. It's just a residence permit. Yeah.
It's a residence permit. Yeah. But it's the same. You have to go back to, in theory, you have to go back to your country and ask from there.
That's normally, yes. My advice would be to try to secure a job whilst she is in Canada so that she can start the process straight away. But if she cannot, obviously, then she comes to France. But then it's like flipping a coin because then there is nothing automatic, as Michel said.
Okay. Yeah. And I said it was the last one, but we got another one since then. So
last one.
last. Michel, can I apply for the carte de séjour right away, or do I have to first apply for the visa, for the VLS, and then apply for the carte de séjour?
You have first to get a visa. That's why we created actually the VLSTS, is to avoid having to ask for a residence permit from a consulate because it would take ages. So the quickest way was to create this long-term visa. Because consulate usually they issue visas much quicker than prefecture issue a carte de séjour.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your great questions. We got a lot of questions today, so that's fantastic. Again, you can find the webinar, you can replay, look at it again if you want, as many times as you want. It's going to be available on the YouTube channel for Frenchly YouTube channel, and also you'll get the link if you registered for this webinar. You'll get an email in a few hours giving you the link to the replay. And of course, we encourage you to contact directly Fabien or Michel with any questions you would have. And thank you so much, Fabien. I give you the floor for the conclusion.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a pleasure, and we've had a great time. Hopefully, we've helped just a couple people's, and I've shared Michel's and my details on the screen, so anyone can shoot a question, shoot an email. More than happy to help, even if we don't do business. I mean, the goal is to make sure everyone hands to France and lives the French dream, so that we can reverse the concept.
Thank you everyone, and stay tuned on Frenchly for more info on traveling and living in France. Thank you very much.